This time, Klopp rebuilds the Dortmund wall.
And it's no, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a while over forever and more. And it's no, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a while over forever and more.
Hello and welcome to By Far the Greatest Team, a podcast in which football fans attempt this seemingly impossible to once and for all to rank who is the greatest team of all time. Of course, it's Oxford United, but only I would say that I suggest, and a few others. My name's Dunn, campaigning for Oxford United in the red corner and surrounded by spreadsheets. It's our king of the day, Jamie Rooney.
We're moving westways. We were in the European Cup with Steaua Bucharest and Romania last week, and now we're in the heartland of Germany to discuss and talk about this incredible Jürgen Klopp team. We're moving back towards Blighty, Graham.
Well, definitely so. And joining us this week, welcome back, Matt Leigh. Hi, Matt.
Hi guys, it's good to be back talking about one of my most used FIFA teams of sort of the 2015 period. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one.
I think me and Jim were talking about this, and we think our regular people who've been on the pod have sort of come back, seem to have a region they specialise in. So Phil, very much covering the northeast, and Jamie the south coast, and Declan our northern correspondent. But we're struggling to do that with you, Matt. So the clear difference is that you do bring the age down. References are no longer all guaranteed to be 1980s crap television programmes.
He's not our regional correspondent. He's our generational correspondent.
But I like the term generational because that makes me sound extremely talented. So we'll stick with that.
And actually, the team we're going to look at tonight, the Borussia Dortmund. There are several iterations of this side. We are going to focus on Jürgen Klopp's era for sort of obvious reasons, but actually there are multiple generations of this club, and I suppose, Jamie, from a historical perspective, who are Dortmund?
BVB, Dortmund. They were founded in 1909. Originally a church team. I think there were some rebels in the flock that decided they wanted to split off, and they formed their own football club. BVB translates literally as Ball Sports Club. It's one of the shorter German words. And Borussia is a brewery. So you've got German beer and football making a relationship and forming a historic club. And what's really interesting about this team is in the 1930s, they actually run the team by allowing fans to vote who should play at each game. So the manager wouldn't pick the team. The fans would be allowed to vote and decide who plays. I think a novel concept that strangely hasn't caught on, and I can't understand why, because it seems to be such a regular thing. We all pick the team as football fans, surely. Why don't the managers open the gates and allow us to do this on a more formal basis?
Wasn't there a non-league club that did that, though? I've got a feeling it's something like Gravesend.
Football fans are really stupid. I was leaving the North London Derby on Sunday, I'm walking back to the car with my dad. We're a bit down. I'm Spurs how we lost. And then I've got this guy yapping, me and my dad are talking about how Ben Davies is a reliable performer, but, he's exposed at the top level. And I have this guy next to me going, we have to get rid of Ben Davies. He's been here for 10 years. What's he still doing here? And then we're like, okay, that's not that controversial. And then he goes on to say, we've got to get rid of Postecoglou. Teams have worked us out. It's a long ball over the top. It happens all the time. Happened today. And I was just thinking, stop talking to me, please. This is why football fans should not be allowed to be involved in deciding who plays for a football team, because they're all stupid.
There is definitely a very large emotional investment that would definitely compromise team selection.
For sure. It's my honest, heartfelt opinion that there should be an IQ test before you go to a football match.
That's brilliant. I mean, how would that work? That's fantastic. And that's download before you can get in with your ticket. You have to answer 10 questions.
10 questions. 10 questions that are just IQ, and then 10 questions on the team just to check you know what you're going to see. That's it.
I sort of 70 to 80% agree with you on that. The only thing is that just every now and then there will be a player or a decision or a call that a manager makes that they just repeatedly get wrong, and that everyone in the ground, it's sort of like the complete opposite, isn't it? It's not so much that fans are 90% know what they're talking about. It's just that every now and then 90% fans are right when managers stand by some absolutely insane decision.
But I often think that's a power play from the manager who wants to make a point, saying, I know better, so this is what I'm going to do, and to hell with it. Because I actually don't think managers are stupid. This is the dichotomy. Most managers, I don't think are really stupid, and maybe I'm putting them on a pedestal. But I think they do understand, logic sometimes, and sometimes I think they are trying to think on too high a level, which could be seen as silly, and overcomplicate things. And that's where you get these issues where all the fans are thinking, "What are you doing?" The manager going, "No, I know better," and it backfires.
So it's very difficult when you view German football through the current prism. I'd have forgotten there was an era when Bayern Munich didn't win everything. And actually, it was not even that long ago. Bayern Munich was being a successful side over a period of time. But Dortmund have a sort of, what's their kind of record like?
The Bundesliga has only been in existence since 1963. It's a youngish league in context to the other European leagues. And at the point in 1963, the German National League was set out where you would play regional leagues, and then the top teams from the regions would then contest a final, and the winner of that would be crowned German national champions. And by the time of the Bundesliga was formed, Borussia Dortmund had won the last and final regional contest, and they had 3 German titles. Bayern Munich had 1. So in 1963, Dortmund had 3. Bayern Munich had 1. So in 1963, Dortmund were 2 ahead of Bayern Munich. Dortmund also went on and had good success in the 60s. They won the Cup Winners' Cup in 1966, and they beat Liverpool. So that was good. And that was the first German title, European title that was ever won. But then they fell into a bit of a pattern of success follows failure follows debt. Success follows failure follows debt. And this happened for a period of 20, 30 years, right up until the 1990s, where Ottmar Hitzfeld then changed the fortunes of Dortmund and really elevated them as one of the biggest teams in European football. Graham will love this. So we're used to looking at manager pages like our favourites, Claudio Ranieri, who has managed 20 plus football teams, and the Wikipedia page goes on forever and ever and ever. Now, Borussia Dortmund had over 20 managers in a 16-year period between 1972 and 88. They were changing their manager on average every 9 months. So it's the reverse of the Claudio Ranieri.
So they're very much adopting the Watford management model at that stage.
Yeah, bless him. I heard Tom Cleverley talking about his ambitions for Watford the other day, and I'm like, what's the point?
That was an interesting interview, though. He did say he had more ambitions as a coach than he did as a player. That ties well, actually. This is a brilliant link. Brilliant link into Klopp, who said I had a Division 4 player's feet and a Division 1 player's head. That's why perhaps the top players don't always become the best managers, because they are confused as to why everyone can't just do what they do. And it's the players who have to think about the game a bit more, have to understand and make the most out of their talent, understand how best to bring a team forward, because you'll only be as good as your weakest link.
I mean, even if you think of Jose Mourinho, one of the most successful coaches in the last 25 years, I mean, he didn't even have a playing career. Arsene Wenger rarely had a playing career. I like the link as well, because in my head, I'm linking Tom Cleverley as a future Liverpool manager.
Yeah, possibly. Possibly. Doesn't that he's a United boy. Surely he'd never do
He
that.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about Hitzfeld, and it is interesting to talk about the golden era of Dortmund, and I think for one mind as much because of how they played and what it meant. We think of it as the Klopp era, but there's definitely a case that you could argue that 1990s Dortmund is actually the golden era of Dortmund.
Yeah, it is. They win a European Cup in '97. They beat Juventus. They win a couple of leagues. Hitzfeld, who's come in and has changed the fortunes of Dortmund, then leaves after they won the European Cup and joins Bayern Munich. And that is a theme in the history of these two football teams. And then after that, the fortunes of Dortmund do really slump. So they get into debt again. Their rivals, Bayern Munich, starts paying their players wages each month just to keep the lights on and the thing ticking along. They float the club on the stock market, the first German team to do that, and that's a failure. And then you've got Thomas Dahl, head coach in 2008, is fighting off a relegation battle, which brings us up to when Klopp steps in. It's a yo-yo for Dortmund. They win, they go into debt, and they go into dark times. They win, they go into debt, and they go into dark times. And this is a pattern that's been around since the 1960s.
And so this is the point at which enter Jürgen Klopp, as you both touched on before. Jürgen Klopp, well, he was born to be manager, was he?
He didn't have a successful career. I mean, I've seen him training videos of him, and he doesn't look like he's ever touched a football in his life. So maybe he was born to be a manager, or maybe something else. He comes in after leaving Mainz after they get relegated, I'm correct. And it's an interesting point in time for them. His personality, as has been the case with Liverpool, molds really well with this sort of post-industrial or industrial town. He just understands people and has a way with people that instantly gets a fan base on board. That meeting of sort of personalities is what makes them such a good fit and what makes Klopp quite interesting.
It's worth pointing out his time at Mainz as a player as well, just to kind of link in where Matt is, where he didn't really know where he fitted in. He started out as a striker, and I think he is Mainz's record goal scorer, but it's not a huge number. It's something in the 50s over, I think he was there for a good dozen seasons. And then he finishes up as a defender.
Yeah, so Jürgen Klopp's footballing career hadn't necessarily taken off. What about his managerial career, Jamie?
Yeah, so Matt's already touched on it. So he's at Mainz, and he was at Mainz for 8 years. So I think he's still Mainz's longest-serving manager, and he took him from the lower reaches up into the Bundesliga, the top league, where he was able to keep them in the Bundesliga for a couple of seasons, and then they got relegated. And at that particular point, Klopp's stock was incredibly high, and he could have moved on, but he stayed loyal to the cause. He stayed loyal to the team he'd been with as a player and a coach, and he vowed to get them back into the Bundesliga. But he unfortunately failed to achieve that. Mainz didn't get promotion from Bundesliga 2 into Bundesliga 1. And at that point, the offers were just knocking on his door. Bayern Munich was sniffing around. But Klopp resisted the lure of Bavaria and Oktoberfest, and decided that he was going to try his next stint at Borussia Dortmund, where he goes in 2008.
You definitely hear managers talk about the project. They like talking about the project. They're quite often happy to move on somewhere before the project has been completed for the next thing. That it has to be said for across the board, where it's quite an unusual thing to have had sort of 3 lengthy spells at clubs. I'm struggling to think of another manager who, Graham Taylor maybe did it a few times, Watford, Villa, Wolves, but you tend to find managers move on, or people get tired of them. But it is quite an unusual pattern of these lengthy periods. 8 years at Mainz, so he was at Dortmund for 7 years, wasn't it?
I think there's 2 points to that, though. So there's firstly, he's a talented manager. So there's not a lot of top level managers out there who are good enough to stay in their role. And also on that same thing, a lot of these top talented managers are often looking for that next challenge. I mean, you look at Guardiola, his career path. I mean, he's been at City a very long time, and that's the thing. But after Barcelona, he was tired. I mean, you could argue maybe he's not the best example because he was at Barcelona for a while and Bayern Munich for a relatively long period. But in current terms, but a lot of these managers are highly combustible, have very high demands of players, and you often see it end with either a falling out with the ownership or a falling out with the players. And then that's where I think it ties back into Klopp well, is that A, he's a talented manager, but B, the clubs he's been at, Mainz, he's got this historical link with them, he played for them, he managed them. Dortmund, industrial town. There's a brilliant quote from the chairman, Hans-Joachim Watzke, and he said that you can't call a football supporter a customer. And that sort of sums up the ideas at Dortmund that they are part of the club. You know, they used to vote to see who plays. And that's another similar thing when you get to Liverpool, that the town and team are so intrinsically linked. So when they like a manager, they really take to him, and you almost get this cult personality. So whilst they do demand success, they also, if you are relatively successful and have a good relationship with the fan base, they'll let you stay there for longer. So I think that's the teams he's picked. If you go to a club like a Chelsea, it's much harder to stay there for a long period of time because that's never been their model. But if you go to a team like Dortmund or Liverpool, that's where you can stay in those roles for a bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think one thing that should be pointed out on that with Klopp is that he's never been in a situation where he's been under pressure to be sacked as well. He's always been in control of when he will leave a football club. And in a football career that is, as a football manager, I think is 23, 24 years long. That's incredible to go that many years and never really be in the situation where you're under pressure to be kicked out is pretty unique.
So the Dortmund that Klopp inherits, so they finish 13th, don't they, in the year before? What kind of team does he take over?
So Klopp inherits a fairly good bunch of players, and I think he recognises in many of them straight away that they've got the typical Klopp work ethic. He likes hard-working footballers. Talent is important, but hard work is more important to Klopp, and he kind of fits into the philosophy of how he wants the game played. So he likes hard workers. He gets the goalkeeper, Roman Vendefeller's 28 at this particular point, the oldest player by a long margin that Klopp will be using in his time at Dortmund. He's been at Dortmund since 2002. He's an established goalkeeper. He's not really a goalkeeper that likes to play with his feet, but he is a goalkeeper that is a trusted pair of hands between the sticks and understands the tactics of the team and understands what he's there to be doing. He also has Sebastian Kehl, who's been the club captain for some time, although Kehl is injured for a few seasons, but Klopp is able to fix that. They've also got this wonderful winger, Jacob Blakowski, who was known as Kuba, and he's a wonderful, wonderful pacey winger. And beyond that, it's a busy summer as well. I think the work is going on behind the scenes with Klopp coming in, but also there's a guy in the background called Michael Zorc, who's been at Dortmund for a long, long time, played over 500 games. When he finishes playing, he then goes into the back room, and over time he becomes a sporting director. That fairly newish role that definitely grew and had importance in the European game, in Germany in particular, in Spain and in Italy, and probably only in the last maybe 8 or 9 seasons in the English Premier League become more of a recognised role. But Michael Zorc was incredibly conscious that Dortmund had gone into debt after success and they were living beyond their means, and he didn't want the team to be in debt any longer. So he went through a period of change to invest in younger players and the academy. And when you look at the back end of that academy now, Haaland, Bellingham, Sancho, Dembele, I mean, it's a pretty successful academy. So on top of that, on Vendefeller, Kehl and Blakowski Kuba, they also bring in Smeltzer, who's a left back. They bring in Subotic, who from Mainz. Klopp brings him with him, basically. He's a 19-year-old at this point. And another wonderful centre-back, Mats Hummel. Those who are more familiar with the younger-looking Quentin Tarantino will probably make similar visual references. That Hummel's had
That's offensive. I think that's rude. Hummels is a good-looking guy.
Younger Quentin Tarantino. Not the Botox version that kind of builds up those violent films these days. The Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs Tarantino. And also, there's a very key signing. One of the guys that's been there for a long time, made his debut actually when he was 16, Nuri Sahi. This is his showcase season. So Klopp's got a fairly decent core there to get started, but he knows there's a few other pieces of the jigsaw he needs to fix. And one of the players he's got, which I'd be really interested to hear Matt's view on, beyond all the other players I mentioned, is Kevin Prince Boateng, because we've spoken about Boateng previously with a Portsmouth fan, our South Coast lady, who had views on Boateng, and it would be good to get a Tottenham perspective on Kevin Prince Boateng, who actually was a Tottenham player at the time when Klopp came in and was being loaned out to Dortmund.
Here's the debate. I remember him more as his time at AC. I'm going to disappoint here because I remember him better for his time on the continent. AC Milan, I believe I watched him. You do have to remember, as your Gen Z representative, at the time Klopp moves to Dortmund, I am 8. So my 8 or 9. So my memories of Kevin Prince Boateng are limited. I did watch Dortmund, and I watched them more and more as they progressed, and I got older and more into football, particularly in sort of 2012, 2013. But 2008, 2009, we are stretching my memory just a little bit.
So this first season for Klopp, he has relative success there, doesn't he? But it's not, an immediate turnaround. But there's a steady improvement, isn't there?
Yeah, I think he steadies the ship. He gets him into competing for Europa League places. Finish 6th. Wolfsburg win the league. Managed by Felix Magath.
Well, I remember him from Fulham, so that's he was at Fulham for a bit, wasn't he? Yeah. And I remember Steve Sidwell doing an anecdote. I think it was Felix Magath, where he just made them after a particularly bad loss. He made them all just stand in formation and then not move, because he said, if you don't want to, I'm thinking this is Magath. But he just made them stand in formation, not move, and said, you didn't want to run yesterday, so we're not going to run today. Yeah, so maybe my earlier point about football managers being bright is not quite true, because that doesn't seem like how you motivate your players.
I think Felix Magath adopted more of the school teacher approach amongst many things, including a bizarre amount of eccentricities. Perhaps my favourite thing about him is when it was Hangeland got injured at Fulham, and Felix Magath had, I don't think it was like maybe a soft tissue injury. It wasn't sort of, and Felix Magath had recommended putting a soft cheese on there to help treat that, which I'm not sure the medical elements of that, but certainly gets you noticed. So he's at Wolfsburg, who were just won. So the Bayern Munich are they not winning titles at this stage?
They're winning every other title at the moment, so they're taking a year off every season.
So they can still we can still sort of see Dortmund, or in fact any other side in Germany, winning the title as to some extent an underdog achievement or a big act to actually achieve.
No, it's definitely a more transient period of German football. But as Klopp makes sort of steady year-on-year progress. So he misses out in his first season, like Jamie said, and then the next season, I think Klopp says, during 2009-10, that he just wants to run into a European pitch on a Thursday night instead of sitting on the couch and watching it at home. And sort of by the end of 2009-10, they qualify for Europe, which is great. And all of these players that Jamie referenced before, plus Sven Bender and Kevin Broskowitz as well, and they all sort of start to get used to Klopp's style of play. And I think this is something we see more now. That it's an interesting one, but and I'd be interested to hear your guys' take on this as people who've watched football a bit longer than I have, because I'm really, really young. But the sort of adaptation year that I think is starting to come into place in the top managers in football. So if you look at Arteta at Arsenal, you look at Guardiola at City, you look at Klopp at Liverpool. Obviously, it's getting in the right players to play your style, which is another point. That's actually the interesting point, that you have an ideology that you fit, and the players need to fit that. Whereas perhaps previously you thought about how you could get the best out of a team. Managers now, more and more in the last sort of 15, 20 years, are now getting players to fit their ideology, and having that, taking a whole year often or longer to get that, to implement that style. And I wonder if you think that's happened more as time's gone on.
There's more of an audience, and there's more of an audience involvement now. You know, with the advent of fantasy football, with the internet, we do have eyes all over the place. So I think there are more eyes on football styles and the way that managers conduct their teams and set out their teams and the players that they bring into their systems than there's ever been before. And I think having that microscope shared in every single household in the world, and also sort of have a view on the development of the game. But I don't think there's anything massively unusual about managers fitting players into a style or retrofitting a style into players. I think it's always been there. I think more so on the continent than in the English game. You could go right back to, Rinus Michels at Ernst Happel, even. This is really going back to the 1950s and 60s. These were, you could even, to bore the tits off both of you, there's managers like Jimmy Hogan and Fred Pentland, who are English managers in the 1920s and 30s, and they had to go to Europe in order to share their ideas of football, to get their ideas adopted into football. I think it's because everyone has a view on everything in football, because everything is available all of the time.
There's always been this kind of, as you say, that this transition period. And actually, I suppose, and with Dortmund, we're getting to this point. There's two or three things that go to make this such a special story, and one of them is Klopp's style, isn't it? One of them is this heavy metal football, this high pressing game. Jamie, you're a coaching specialist, a football styles specialist from the years. You just said you waxing lyrical there. Coaches from the 1920s. Is he the first to do this? Is this unique to Klopp?
Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hand it over to the FIFA generation, and I'm going to give this one to Matt to tackle first.
So, how do I put this? Klopp, pressing is not new. I just think that there's such an obsession with pressing and Genga pressing, and it sounds aggressive, and because it's a German word, and that's what we associate with it, and it sounds very, confrontational. But to me, and I don't know if any other manager or person would say this, but it seems quite common sense that if you win the ball in the other half of the pitch, you're closer to goal, it's going to be easier to score. Look, I'm not begrudging that Klopp does it better than other people, and I'm not saying that I don't want people to think that I think Klopp's a bad manager because he's not got this revolutionary style of football. It's common sense to say that if you win the ball high and you're day one pass and you're in, that's the best way to score goals. And I was rewatching, sort of Dortmund key games, and they really do win that ball high, and it's brilliant and it's fantastic. But I don't think it's revolutionary, but I do think he did it better than everyone else. Which is amazing, and I'm not begrudging him, but I don't think it's this ridiculous new amazing thing. And also, having done my research beforehand, there was an interesting quote from you'll like this one because he's old. You'll like this one because it's the great Arrigo Sacchi from AC Milan. My hand even went like this, but he even said the key to their success, our pressing was psychological as much as physical. And I do think there's something to that, in that you really do demoralize the team if you keep taking the ball off them high up the pitch, and then they revert to sort of trying to pump it long and try and change the way they play. And I think that's a brilliant, when you can't build up in the way you want to and you feel like you've got no time. And then at the Dortmund stadium with the crowd on you and everything like that, it all will come together to be very difficult to play in. However, it's not a revolutionary tactic. Pressing has been in football since it was invented.
I absolutely agree. And Jürgen Klopp, as brilliant as his pressing game has been, and as effective as it's been, it is the propeller heads. It's all just a little bit of history repeated. And Matt has referenced Arrigo Sacchi, who is famed for his AC Milan teams dominating European football in the late 80s and early 90s. But you can go back a couple of decades before that. Valery Lebanovsky, look him up. He was famed with Dynamo Kiev for many years, and he was known for rigorous training regimes. He was known for getting his players super fit so they could run more than their opponent. And this is exactly what Klopp is designed to do. In fact, I think Klopp gets more excited about seeing the stats after the game where his players have collectively run more than the opposition. They're winning a football match. He likes to see his team do the things he's asked them to do and do it better than the opponent.
It is interesting. We were talking about John Beck's Cambridge United. John Beck, another recent reference for you there, Matt. John Beck was a champion of long ball football, ultimate long ball football. It was literally kick it in the corners, throw the grass along, leave the ball stuck in there and whip it in for. Do you want Dublin head in again? Another reference to the home. But what was really interesting watching that again, you saw how much they press. Pressing was an absolutely central part to it, and it's a different kind of, the total game plan was different. Not that different, actually. Get the ball forward quickly. I mean, I think Liverpool and Dortmund have done it with a bit more art than Cambridge did it at the time. But
of course,
the fundamentals, which was when you lose the ball, you just bust a gut to win it back at any cost. That isn't revolutionary.
It's not revolutionary. Like even if you look at sort of Sean Dyche's Everton, they don't do it as high up the pitch. They don't, it's not the same as when they're sort of on the centre backs. But if you look at when a team passes a certain area, the Everton, when they're playing well, will harry them and get the ball forward as quick as possible. I'd say, that's where you can sort of differentiate Guardiola and those sort of coaches and your brilliant managers like Postecoglou, who have changed it a little bit and it's more about controlling the game. That's, to me, slightly more interesting from a tactical perspective. But if you're saying who I'd rather watch, then we have more interesting debate, because Klopp's teams are fantastic to watch and it's amazing.
That's the thing with this Dortmund team. They were just absolutely wonderful to watch. I would say they were everyone's favourite neutral. I became obsessed with watching them. They would just be They would regularly be on my TV every weekend if the game was on television, because I just couldn't wait to watch them. And as Matt mentioned, in the 9-10 season, they brought in a couple of additions. And one of the ones that they did bring in through the youth academy, a fantastic little player who goes on to score the winning goal in the 2014 World Cup, Mario Götze, who is absolutely the perfect number 10 in the style of football that Klopp is designed. And they also bring in a number 9, and we're used to that with Klopp's teams as well. Lucas Barrios comes in from Colo-Colo. And at 24, he's considered, like you and I, Graham, with Matt right now, considered an old man at 24 in this particular Dortmund team, because the average age through this season is less than 22 years old.
I suppose the other factor, and Matt, you mentioned it a bit earlier as part of this, is the fans and the atmosphere. And there is something special about the wall at Dortmund. There is something that then kind of works in tandem with that high energy football, isn't there?
Well, if you think his football's heavy metal, and then you've got a wall of drunk Germans screaming at you, there's that doesn't get much more heavy metal than that. I think it's that perfect match of cultures again that we spoke about earlier, in terms of, this is a place that lives and breathes football. This is their, that they are, and they don't get music concerts. They live for football, and this is their heavy metal concert, and it's my dream to go and see a game there. But yeah, it's an amazing, amazing place to play football.
Jamie, for you, is that how important was or is that atmosphere to the Dortmund story?
I think it's incredible, and I think if you link the experience that Klopp has had with Liverpool as well, you've got the Klopp end, and I think the similarities are quite. I mean, you absolutely alluded to it. The similarities are there, but yeah, that incredible yellow wall with safe standing as well. That's a hot topic because in English football, standing in the top two divisions, I think, is not allowed. I think you have to be all seater stadiums in the top two divisions. So I don't may got that right or wrong, but I know in the lower divisions you can have standing areas. But Dortmund, there's, I think, correct me if I've got this wrong, Matt, I think it's 25,000 that stand in that end behind the goal, that yellow wall. It's just a phenomenal amount of people, all controlled, all safe, creating this incredible atmosphere. One of the games we can talk about, I don't want to fast forward to the X, it's fantastic, but the Malaga game in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, the yellow wall sucks the ball in. It doesn't literally, that's stupid. It's metaphorically sucks the ball in.
So Dortmund finished fifth in that set in Klopp's second season, and then sort of, I suppose, arguably, it's the third. If there were three ingredients to it, atmosphere, Klopp, it's the third ingredient. The number 9 they bring in from Poland.
They will still win a title with Barrios leading the line. So he cements them as that team that number 9 that missed out on his dream move to Blackburn.
We should really share that story.
I mean, Graham, this is your neck of the woods, the Ash Club, but which I refer. I can't believe I've been on 3 podcasts and we've spoken about the Ash Cloud twice. Yeah, the story goes that Lewandowski, as if you don't know, that's who we're talking about, had conversations with Blackburn while he was at Poznan. It was Sam Allardyce's Blackburn. He thought Allardyce was bright, and he got on with him, and he was very, very close to joining them. And then I don't know if he'd been to see the training ground previously, but then when his medical was scheduled, the ash cloud meant he couldn't fly there, but ends up joining Dortmund from Lech Poznan, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Yes, we could have seen him in the Premier League, and he's a proper striker. Just close control, one touch finishes. It's just a proper number 9 who plays how you want your number 9 to play.
Yeah, he's a classy player, and he's 22 years old when Blackburn Rovers are ready to sign him, and as Matt said, the whole world has stopped for a few days when he can't fly to Blackburn to sign. But he's got incredible pace as well. It is a wonderful signing. I think it's I don't know what player it was. I think it was a player at Dortmund got wind of the fact that I think it was one either Blakowski or Piszczek who signed the Polish players, and they knew that Lewandowski was going off to Blackburn, and I think they just said, "Why don't you come down to Dortmund instead?" And I think that was enough to change his mind. And Klopp was happy with Zorc to take him on. But it's a brilliant rabbit hole, isn't it? One of those kind of subgenres of players that nearly signed for other clubs, and you could go way back to the great Michel Platini, who in the 1980s nearly signed for Wolverhampton Wanderers. And you can fast forward to the modern day. Cristiano Ronaldo nearly went to Manchester City a few seasons ago.
There are so many of those great transfer stories. I think one of the famous ones is Asa Hartford, who was about to join Leeds in 1971. Interesting time to be going there, and that collapses after a medical finds a hole in his heart. Apparently, then goes on to play very successfully in West City, and they probably should have signed him really at the end of it. Stan Collymore, could be a supplier. He didn't stump up the required amount that Southend wanted. That doesn't look like good business now. But I don't think there's any side that doesn't have a regrettable skeleton, a transfer skeleton in their cupboard.
I'm not going into the list of Spurs ones, it's too long.
Another player that
The trouble is a lot of those skeletons are out of the cupboard.
Yes, they're very much out of the cupboard when we could have signed Dybala or Bruno
You're not in the
Fernandes.
cupboard. That would have been there. That would have been the answer.
Yeah. Well, we had a deal agreed with Fernandes. We had a deal agreed with Grealish. We had a deal agreed with Dybala.
this definitely links in because you've got the relationship between Zorc, you've got the owner of Dortmund, this the CEO who Matt referenced, and then you've got the manager Klopp. They clearly have a strong relationship in terms of they trust each other, they trust the judgment in terms of where they're taking the club and the direction it's going, so they can make quick decisions. And when you've got ownership like that, it makes things a lot easier. And if you've got ownership like they have at Tottenham Hotspur and Manchester United, suddenly it becomes a bit more complex. But they do go on and win the league.
Yes, so tell me about the glorious 2010-11 season, which is a highly successful one for them, isn't it?
They start the season losing to Leverkusen, and then they just go on an absolute tear and don't lose another game until December. I mean, it's a recipe for success. You have big wins in that time as well. They beat local rivals, Schalke. They just start very strong and continue, and only with a couple of hiccups here and there, but they win the title quite comfortably. And it's sewn up pretty quickly, despite Klopp often saying throughout the season that he doesn't think it's not sewn off even when they're sort of 10, 11 points clear. And if we just skip ahead to sort of 2011-12, it's interesting how it contrasts. By September 18th, they've lost 3 games already. So it's interesting how in the 2 seasons that Klopp wins the title at Dortmund, one, they start off like a house on fire and hold it. And the second, they start slowly and then from September don't lose another game the entire season. So he sort of does it both ways and bumps to the title both times. I think in 2010, they win the league by 7 points, and in 2011 they win the league by 9 points. I want to say 9. I'm wrong. It's 8. But yeah, so it's they're not close title races. His team dominate Bundesliga for 2 years, which we find baffling as football fans. Well, I particularly because Bayern Munich have had such a stranglehold on it. To think of a time when Dortmund, when it was another team.
Yeah, it's quite incredible the run that they put together in those 2 seasons. You're right, man. They go 14 wins out of 15 after losing the first home game to Leverkusen. The league is pretty much tied up with games to go. So much so that they have over 300,000 ticket requests for the final home game. I mean, the Signal Udunda stadium is a pretty impressive stadium. We've all agreed we want to go there and be part of that yellow wall. It's an 81,000 capacity. It's a massive stadium. So Dortmund are already getting a fair chunk of fans through the gates every home game. 300,000 ticket requests is just incredible, and that just shows you the size of this football club in German football.
And it's interesting. So we talk a lot about signings, but Sahin sort of in that first title winning season, then so he starts out young, and it's interesting to again we're going to draw a lot of Liverpool comparisons, but Schmelzer and Piszczek are tireless fullbacks working up and down. And it's sort of the heartbeat of that team. And then you have your perfect sort of centre-back pairing with your ball playing more cultured, some might say, centre-back in Hummels, who is actually not, who doesn't actually come from Dortmund, actually comes from Bavaria, and then ends up in at Dortmund. And then that towering presence next to him of Subotic. And then what Klopp has always played with is pace up front. So Barrios is quick and strong in that first season, and Blaszczykowski, one of my favourite FIFA players ever. He was just so good. I cannot emphasise. He was just the dribble pace was great. His crosses were impeccable. He was just brilliant. This is a team of hard-working, I wouldn't call them superstars. Some of them do go on to become superstars, but if we're being honest with ourselves, Gundogan, who joins in that, who sort of comes through in that second season, is not a superstar. He is a brilliant player, but he becomes a superstar at City, and even then is understated. Royce, I don't think, has ever been a superstar. I think he's been a Dortmund star. And Goetze is just, again, is a sort of failed one because he scores that goal in the World Cup final, but he never quite reaches that pinnacle that they think is going to dominate for years to come. So it's a team of hard-working, talented players who would no big egos, no sort of outstanding. These are the amazing players. I understand that Lewandowski goes on to become that and is a very good player at that time, but I wouldn't say he's a superstar when he's there.
In that first season, it's actually it is Barrios who's the goal scorer, isn't it? Lewandowski doesn't actually. I think he only gets 9 goals, which is, by his standards, relatively barren season.
Well, what Klopp does is he doubles up in key positions. So he does have Barrios, who's the principal goal scorer, but they brought in Lewandowski. I mean, pretty decent backup. They got Goetze as the number 10, but they've also brought in a wonderful, wonderful player, and I wish he'd have done way better at Manchester United as well as he did at Dortmund, in Shinji Kagawa, who plays in that number 10. Absolute phenomenal footballer, a brain that was just so far advanced in terms of understanding space and potential for exploiting space. And then Sven Bender, we've talked about. You've still got Sebastian Kiel, who's there, who's sharing that role. So you've got these key positions that Klopp is doubled up with significant players to be able to bring and change these players in these key roles. And Matt mentioned about Nuri Sahin, a fantastic footballer. In the 11-12 season, he actually moves. He gets his big move to Real Madrid. And I think Matt referenced him. Gundogan comes in and replaces him. And we know that Gundogan has gone on to be a phenomenal football player at Dortmund and at Manchester City. So Klopp is always thinking about how to reinvent football teams, whether it's on the bench or whether it's players he's going to bring in the next summer.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you do see is these 2 seasons in particular, Dortmund double down, win the league in 2011-12, and on that one they get a record points total. They're doing, they are absolutely smashing it. And it is interesting, actually, I think, to your point, Matt, people always talk with Klopp sides about, because of the intensity of it, can they play at that level again? They must let out if you play that kind of football. And after they stumbled for the first 2-3 games. Well, yeah, and it proves that way. But you could imagine after they stumbled after the first 3 games of that season, that would have been the narrative, wouldn't it?
At any elite level, you're going to get a level of burnout. So I think it's an interesting one to say, yes, physically these teams are working extremely hard and playing at this high level. But I think whenever you're a top successful team, and we've seen this with Guardiola and why he's been managed to be so successful with City, and then Sir Alex did this with United, is that you need to keep continuously replace players, because winning is hard and mentally taxing. So yes, physically, Klopp plays a high brand, high octane type of football. But if you're going to do that successfully over a long period of time, it doesn't matter what your philosophy of football is, you need to continuously not reinvent, but just get in a player here or there to keep that success going. And make sure that enough of your players stay hungry. So yes, I understand that it's easy to say, well, they run a lot, so they must be more tired. But you still need, any top team, any top company or whatever, you continuously need to replace your people at the top level or ensure that your people stay hungry. And that way, when you're a bit more tired in the 85th minute, they'll keep going.
And I absolutely agree, but there's another thing going on here as well, because Dortmund are dominating. Not only are they winning the leagues, they're winning the Bundesliga. They won the cup as well, and they smashed Bayern Munich in this 11-12 season, 5-2 in the final. They've just recorded 81 points in the Bundesliga, which is the highest ever amount. So this is a team that has won a handful of titles, and I think they've upset the establishment. They've rattled the cages of the giant that is Bayern Munich. And boy, in 2012, 2013, the Bayern Munich put the wrongs right.
Yeah, well, how do Bayern respond? They respond as they usually do. They take some of their players.
Yeah, and well, yeah, this is the thing, and even more so in 2012, 13, because you have the announcement of Götze going to Bayern Munich before the Real Madrid semi-final. But this Champions League run, which I'm glad we're going to touch on now, is brilliant. And I watched the highlights of it, and even in the big games against Real Madrid, the 4-1, Bayern Munich Dortmund win the ball high and get it. Get the ball to the goal quickly. It's heavy metal football at its best. They do the same against Malaga. They do the same against City. This Champions League run that Dortmund go on, and as Jamie alluded to earlier, haven't had much European success for many years, is brilliant, and is probably, it's arguably the best iteration of Klopp's Dortmund that sort of don't win the league and don't win the Champions League. You could make that argument with the players more mature, another year on in their development. Gundogan is probably an upgrade on Sahin, if we're being honest with ourselves. Lewandowski is probably an upgrade on Barrios. So, and these are players who are starting to come into their prime. They just run into a Bayern Munich team that have some more other very good players as well.
I think Bayern Munich have taken the threat of Dortmund serious because they've employed, at the start of the season, they bring in Matthias Sammer. Matthias Sammer is the sporting director of Bayern Munich, who is an absolute football brain. Dortmund legend, won the Ballon d'Or as a defender with Dortmund, part of the European Cup winning team in 97, a manager that led Dortmund to the league in 2002. And they kick off the season in the Super Cup. Bayern Munich, having won nothing the season before, are invited back to the Super Cup because they're the glorious runners-up. And this is the Charity Shield or the Community Shield equivalent. And Munich beat Dortmund in that format. So they kick off the season by losing to Bayern Munich. And I think that just sets the trend. Because I think, and here lies the argument, Dortmund win nothing in 2012, 2013. But I think it's their best season under Klopp. I think everything comes into play. And I think the reason they don't win everything, for two reasons. Bayern Munich, who actually do win everything.
Yeah, it's more mature, more used to playing his style of football. Yeah, but they don't win anything. It sounds a lot like a team I know.
Awesome. Just go back to the Champions League run. I think the run starts in the group stage, and the group is ridiculous. Yeah. The group that they're in is just, it's a who's who of Champions League football. Dortmund are paired with Manchester City, Real Madrid, and Ajax. That is their group.
Yeah, and they dominate Ajax in the group stages, but City, I think they beat and they draw, and Madrid they beat and draw as well. I wanna say, but yeah, it's a proper Champions League group of high quality. And European nights at Dortmund are just something special. Something under lights are amazing to see. And then they beat in the round of 16. Is it? It's not Zagreb. It's Shakhtar. Yeah, that is. They lose the away leg and come back home and show them what's what.
And then that sets up this incredible quarter-final with Malaga. Ruud van Nistelrooy played for Malaga at this particular moment, comes to the end of his career. And in Spain, it finishes 0-0, and then they go back to, I think it's the Westfalenstadion, to play the second leg. And it's one of the greatest endings to a football match, and that's coming from a Manchester United fan who saw the 99 Champions League final.
Yeah, so they are 2-1 down, entering the 92nd minute, I believe it is, and they score, which would have left them out on away goals.
That's right, man.
And then they need
exactly that. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, they need to. And then in the 98th minute, I'm trying to remember who scores it. Is it from a corner they score?
Yeah.
Or is it from Santana scores it, and there's no other way to put it, but the limbs on that goal, I mean, the place erupts. You think you're down and out, and it's a brilliant Champions League moment.
It is one of those moments that if you're on one of your betting apps and you're in the 90th minute and Dortmund need 2 goals, Dortmund are 151 to win. You're not going to put a penny on it because you're going to waste your penny. But it is incredible. And I think it's down to that yellow wall that we talked about previously. I think that the noise is so ruptured. They're kind of willing the team to get back into the game. And they're pushing and pushing and pushing. And then once Royce gets the equaliser at 2-2, it only feels like a matter of time. And there is only moments left in the game that Dortmund are still going to recover this situation. And they go on and they win 3-2 and set up a semi-final with Real Madrid, who they've met in the group stage.
Yeah, I mean, it seems extra harsh that you were in a group with Real Madrid, and in fact top the group with Real Madrid, to play them again in the semi-final. And the first leg goes quite well, doesn't it?
It's all right. I mean, 4-1 at home against Real Madrid is nothing to turn your nose up at. But yeah, no, Lewandowski gets all 4. And they put 4 past them. It's 1-1 for a while in the game, and it's a bit nip and tuck. And then Lewandowski just does what Lewandowski does and scores 3 goals. And
in the space around 10 minutes.
That's quite important. Yeah, not in a long period of time. And that's important because come second leg, Madrid actually win it 2-0. So, you need all 3 of those goals. Yeah, and if you just watch some of the football and some Lewandowski's goal is brilliant, and there's just some brilliant goals in there where pressing high, close control, and I actually think going back to the Malaga game, that there's a goal in the 3-2. I think their first goal is just brilliant football as well, but it's so incisive. It's sort of 5 passes and you're in the other, you're in at the other end. So it's just showing that you could play beautiful football, but you are also getting the ball from A to B as quickly as possible.
And so Dortmund set up a Champions League final in Wembley, in fact, where who should they play in the final themselves up against but our old friends Bayern Munich?
Yeah, who they've lost out on the league, who they lost out in the showcase German starter of the Super Cup, who they got knocked out of in the quarterfinals of the German Cup, who has just taken their best player in April on a pre-agreement for the 37 million euros buyout clause. It took your sporting director. Yeah, I mean, Bayern Munich.
Yeah. And it's I remember distinctly. I mean, I watched finals before this, but I remember this being one of the first Champions League finals that it really sticks out in my head. I watched the whole game, and it was I wouldn't say it was a brilliant game. It was cagey, as these finals often are. But the Bayern go ahead, and then Dortmund equalise from the spot. Gundogan takes he takes a very good penalty. It's and slops it away. And also, I'd like to point out, Dante absolutely leathers. I can't remember who it is. I think it's Royce for the penalty. And Dante is on a yellow card at this point, and he absolutely kicks the shit out of him. And I don't know how he's avoided his second yellow for that. He gets nowhere near the ball, then protests like it's not a penalty. And that could change the game. I mean, it looks to me like it should be a second yellow, personally. But I don't know. It seemed... I've forgotten that was a bit of controversy at the time. But yeah, for me, it's a clear second yellow and a red card. And then maybe, it's 1-1 and Dortmund playing against 10.
I had just a whole series of games where I just remember Robin scoring the winning goal in the last one. They're just there.
Sounds about right.
It seems that
he scuffs the shot at the final as well. It's an absolute scuff.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He does. And so Dortmund's hearts are broken. I do think there's an argument to which there is something about, I don't mean this unkindly, there is something heroic with Klopp and heroic failures, which are almost, for him, it's almost the journey is more interesting than the. So I mean, there's a lot of echoes with some of those Liverpool seasons where they have taken on the impossible and then just kind of fallen away right at the end in quite a heroic way. And I think to some extent, you almost get the feeling that he is happier with having the narrative, the story, the tale. It's almost more than winning. It's a bizarre thing.
I don't know if I agree that he's happier with the story, because I think I think he wants to win. I think with his whole fibre and being, he wants to win, and he yes, he wants to do it his way. But I think that man is desperate to win. The heroic failures, he's limited by the fact that he's against Bayern Munich and then City when he comes to Liverpool. But understandably, he's up against these brilliant sides, and he does get a bit of a pass on the fact that he doesn't win these European titles. And you look at his time at Liverpool in that first Champions League final, he loses. Fine, Salah goes off injured for actually a week in time. The second one they lose to Madrid, they should probably win. They're the better side. So it's the heroic failure line is a nice one, and he's definitely up against a top team. But I don't know if there's much excuse for losing that final to Bayern. I mean, you just lose. You've lost the final to a team that you were nipped up with in the league, and you'd won the league previously. I don't know if there's an argument to be made that you are the major underdog here.
Do you think there's an element that Bayern Munich psychologically have got inside the Dortmund's heads? Because Dortmund have gone from being the team under Klopp, winning the last 2 Bundesliga, beating Bayern Munich in 5 games continuously as well, home and away in those 2 league seasons and in the cup final. And then suddenly Bayern Munich are back, the order is established, and you've seen this team beat you on a number of fronts before this Champions League final. So psychologically, you might be thinking they got the making of you. As strong as Klopp and set his team out.
I mean, yeah, you can make that argument, but I don't think it's an excuse.
As we've discussed, that's probably the high point, even if there aren't actually, at least a playing high point for Klopp and Dortmund. I mean, actually, to Jamie's point, having won the treble and taken Sporting Direction and Mario Götze as well. Bayern don't just stop there today.
No, they take Lewandowski, they take Götze. Royce is the only one who sticks about for a little bit. Gundogan sticks about for a bit before moving on to City. I mean, it's just Hummels I understand more though, because he's a Bavarian boy, so he sort of is going home. I mean, yes, they passed on him, and it's bad that they took him initially, but that is where he's born and raised. Yeah, they just take the spine out of that team, and Dortmund, as good as their talent ID is, and as good as the players they bring in Aubameyang, they bring in, they do bring in good replacements. It's hard to recreate something that was so fresh and so and so new for the club. So it's hard to recreate that success in the following seasons, which progressively get worse and worse.
Yeah, and I think there's parallels with what's going on right now with Klopp with Liverpool. I think he has struggled to recreate what he had with that incredible front three of Firmino, Salah, and Mane. I don't think he's able to recreate that. As the qualities of Liverpool that have had under Klopp with strong defence, incredible midfield. That front three was just deadly. And he hasn't been able to recreate that with, Gakpo and Nunes and Diaz. It's just not quality players, but it's not the same. And I think maybe that plays into his thinking that his time is done. He needs to move somewhere else. And I think that comes to the point with Dortmund as well. About you alluded to it, 2014-15 is a disaster. I mean, they just implode. This is Klopp's final season, and he decides to leave in April. But Matt, I think you're right. I think if he would have decided to leave, then maybe he'd been asked to leave.
They had a terrible start to the season in the relegation zone for a period, and then, sort of bring it together a little bit, and they get a little bit close to the European places. But yeah, it's a disastrous 7th season, and he emotionally decides to leave at the end. I mean, I think he falls on his sword before he's pushed, but I think you earn that with 2 league titles personally, and a complete change in fortunes for a team.
It is one of the most striking strikingly poor final seasons now. I mean, I remember they're going on. I remember but they can't stay. But they have to start winning eventually. They get the floor with the best managers in the world. I know they've lost some players, but this can't keep happening, and it goes on much longer than you ever kind of imagine it would. Obviously, the plot story very quickly regains his mojo at Liverpool. Jamie, what becomes a Dortmund host Klopp?
Well, they just watch Bayern Munich win the league every season. And then when they're presented with the opportunity to finally break that, which they had last season in the 2022-23 season, where they just have to win the last home game, they failed to do that. And Bayern Munich then end up winning the league, which nobody was predicting that morning, unfortunately. But they do influence the German national team, I think, because there's a strong Bayern Munich influence in the German national team around that period, and there's also a strong Dortmund influence, not just the players that are representing Germany in the 2014 World Cup, but the style of play that they're playing. And Germany do go on and win their 4th World Cup in 2014, and they are the best team at that particular moment in the world and are deserving world champions. Not only did they beat Argentina in the final, but smashing Brazil at home 7-1, one of the most greatest moments in World Cup history, Paul.
And I think you can look at as you mentioned earlier, the legacy of Michael Zorc and the players that they bring in, to Hand Bellingham and Haaland, and they've not done badly in their recruitment policy.
No, I mean that's just talent ID is such a buzzword at the moment. But for quote unquote smaller teams, Dortmund's not a small team, and the ability to find new players and consistently sell them for a profit is something that is commendable, and it's interesting to think because you think all these top teams must have good scouts, they must have a good network of players they look at. So why does Dortmund consistently get it right when others get it wrong? And perhaps it's that reputation of players know that when they go there, they're going to be treated well and given opportunity. But it's how you build that culture in the first place. And I don't quite know how they've managed it, but they have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we should probably get to ranking this side, the great Dortmund. As a reminder, we have five categories of greatness, from all-time greats up at the top through to true greats. We have touch greatness as our sort of middle ranking category. Jamie, I'm going to come to you first as ever.
I'm going to be uncharacteristically brief in my summing up on this occasion. I think these are true greats. I think they're second tier. And I know we've had some arguments about teams going into the second tier in recent weeks. All arguments that I put forward, all arguments that I lost. But I do think there's some strength to this. This is a bunch of incredible players. They've won the Bundesliga twice. They smashed Bayern Munich in the final to win the double, and they narrowly missed out on winning the Champions League. It's a glorious period for Borussia Dortmund, probably their best period of all time, with a fantastic manager. And equally, to keep consistency, the two occasions we've had Matt on here, we've done Leicester City and Inter Milan, Mourinho's Milan, Ranieri's Leicester City, and we've ranked them as true greats. So I'm a man of consistency, and I think true greats, Borussia Dortmund for me, second tier.
Well, I'm not a man of consistency. So I'm going to say, now Leicester, I think, would be great because of the journey they went on. And whilst Dortmund do go on an amazing journey, I think they are at a touch of greatness. And it feels harsh because to me, they're sort of a 3.5. They're so close to that like true great thing. But I think they have to win that Champions League final to say they are true greats. Because when you are a team, because yes, they're a small team, but they're not a tiny, like little itty bitty, they're not nobodies. They do have some history. They do have some pedigree, and I do think that that loss in the Champions League final counts against them to make them true greats. Because I think if we're saying the great, if they're in that top tier, they are World Cup winning, multiple Champions League winning, and then we're saying true greats are win a European trophy or do something amazing, then I do think they have to be touch of greatness.
I love it. That's really. I mean, I think I can see where you're coming from with this in terms of the having a Champions League to go with it. There is a kind of a definition of that bigger success. I mean, put it into context. Start from that season on, Bayern Munich win 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think they win 11 leagues in a row until this to the Zero by Leverkusen. I am torn on this because I mean I think your point is right. Is that Dortmund aren't nobody. They are a very established side. They've been financially mismanaged disastrously over the years in many ways. They're a bit of a sleeping giant, but it is, I would say, I dare say that maybe, are they the kind of a German equivalent of a Tottenham? And would we view that Dortmund winning the...
no, because they've won a title in the last sort of 60 years, so...
More like an Arsenal.
So unfortunately...
But that's not even a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
more like an Arsenal.
I think they're more like an Arsenal.
I'd say they're more Arsenal than Spurs.
I'm torn between the two. I like you. I sort of think the 3.5 category is kind of perfect for them. I think the head says touch of greats, and the heart says true greats. And of course, Klopp stories are all about the heart. They're all about the vibes. I think they have to be true greats, just because of the story and the narrative and Klopp and those big shiny teeth. So I'm going to say Dortmund, true greats.
No, I wouldn't take it too bad. I think this is just my tenacity in wearing Graham down over the last few podcasts that we've done, where I've been putting teams that clearly shouldn't even be anywhere near true greats just so I get one in there. So I think this is more, I've worn him down than anything else.
I won't take it personally. I was umming and ahhing.
I should mention, of course, we at the top of the podcast we were talking about this. Ebbsfleet are the team I was thinking of. Ebbsfleet.
Oh, that's true.
Yes. This is nothing to do with what you were just talking about, by the way. They had this sort of web-based venture, My Football Club, and they were fan-owned for about 4 or 5 years. And it was one of those great kind of web trends. Somebody thought it would be quite funny. And I used to work with somebody who bought some shares of it, and 2 or 3 years down the line, it's just that's like another email on which I want something else. An idea that it was, this will be fun. I'll run a football club and I'll make the decisions on who plays where. And a few years down the line, I'm not interested. I'm not interested if that right back goes out on loan. Okay, we should leave it there. Matt, thank you so much for joining us again.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Anytime, guys.
Jamie, thanks for all your hard research there.
And it's a beautiful team. And thank you, Ed, for bringing joy into this team. Joy that we had originally when we live in it right now.
Having done something outrageous and chosen to talk about a team from the 21st century, next week we're going right back down to our heartland, to the 1982 World Cup and the all-conquering Billy Bingham's Northern Ireland. So that's one definitely very squarely in East Eyeline. And we've got a couple more coming up for you. We should happen to have Celtic. And we've got a special cup final special. Yeah. Apologies, Matt. I think we can relive the Coventry glorious victory over Spurs. But there we go. That's for another time. If you have enjoyed the podcast, please like, subscribe to us, tell your friends, and a quick reminder, you can see all our previous. It's by far
just
thegreatesttteam.co, isn't it, Jamie?
Thegreatesttteam.co, yes.
So you can find out more about all our teams from all the podcasts that we've done before there. So do stay tuned, and we'll speak to you again next week.